Hey, Sunil, how you doing, buddy?
What's up, brother? Hey, are we talking 49ers today or are we talking wrestling?
We're talking 49ers, wrestling. What do you want to talk about? We've got
Oh,
it.
man, I'm ready for it. Oh, my guy. So first, let's get the 49ers stuff out because I was really interested in hearing what you had to say about this. So, with 49er fans and all that kind of stuff are kind of low on the depth at cornerback. I'm actually a big fan of Ambry Thomas. I think he's a pretty solid cornerback option. It seems like he actually excels at playing man coverage. I was just our press man. I was just watching, Eric Crocker break him down against Notre Dame against Chase Claypool, who obviously we all know is a really good wide receiver, and he held his own with that. With Verrett on the other side as well, and Mosley. And with DeMeco Ryans coming in as the new defensive coordinator, having that ability to have corners that play well in press, like a Verrett, like a Ambry Thomas, how do you feel like the 49er defense, what changes do you think will be made under the new D coordinator? And do you feel like that zone coverage that we saw is going to change now that they have a different makeup of corner there?
Yeah, I think that's something that I mentioned right after probably the same day of that pick, was that I think it kind of signaled a little bit of a change in what we're going to be seeing out of the 49ers defense with DeMeco Ryans. Because Thomas, when he was at Michigan, that Michigan was a really heavy man coverage team under that defensive coordinator there. I know they mixed in some zone coverages there as well, but they were primarily a man coverage team. That's why you saw him move all around the field. So I think that's part of why they're drawn to him, and I think it's the same thing with Lenore as well. I think he's a guy that they expect to be pretty good in man coverage, and so that's why they made that change. I expect them to be there to be some similarities from what we've seen in years past, and that's going to kind of be their base. But I look for them to probably be blitzing a little bit more than we've seen in the past. Maybe bring in Dre Greenlaw on some blitzes that we haven't seen before. Maybe Warner every once in a while, but Warner's your better cover guy, so you might not want to blitz him too much. So I think we're going to see some more pressure packages come out of them, but at the same time, a heavier use of man, kind of like what we saw from Saleh towards the second half of.
Right. And how do you think that changes how they're going to play the safeties, right? So with Jimmy Ward back there, obviously being kind of like a Swiss Army knife as a safety, and then what do you think changes with them? Do you feel like they're going to be more aggressive as safeties? Do you think they're going to just cover? Like what do you think is going to change? Because I feel like if Mosley goes down, Verrett is an amazing man on cover corner. I think Ambry, if could be anything like he was in college, this will be two corners that could really play man, that play aggressive at the line. I feel like it could do wonders because we haven't really had that in corners before. Like we had Sherman, who was obviously wasn't great at man, much better at the zone coverage. So how does that change, I guess, what the linebackers do, what the safeties do? I really don't know too much X's and O's like that, but how would that change what we're able to do with them?
Well, I think that question really depends on the health of Jaquiski Tartt. Because if Jaquiski Tartt's healthy and he's able to play, let's say, I don't think it's fair to expect him to play all 17 games because he's never done it, really. So, if he can play, let's say he plays 14 games, that's a pretty good number out of him if they can get 14 games out of Tartt. So if you've got those two guys, Tartt has that ability to kind of switch and become your single high safety, and kind of move around. So if those guys are both healthy, I think you're going to see Jimmy Ward up at the line of scrimmage a lot. You saw that a lot in 2019 where he played around the line of scrimmage. I don't know if you saw those videos. I think Eric Crocker was the one that put those out where he was kind of doing a little bit of hype of Jimmy Ward, and you saw him making plays and from the slot. I don't know if you saw that. I think it was last week because if you remember, that's what Jimmy Ward was, right? When he came in, he was a free safety in college, but he played in the slot as well. And when he came to the 49ers, they originally had him playing in the slot. And he's really progressed at that position. So I could see them doing some mixing and matching with those two guys, where depending on what's happening, what the coverage is, one guy is rotating up and playing closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think that's one. And the other one, and I talked about this last week a little bit, was where they're using three safeties, kind of using like a big nickel, where they're using, because they did this last year against New Orleans and a few other times too, where they brought in Marcel Harris, and he was playing up around the line of scrimmage, almost like your third linebacker in nickel situations. So that was like their base defense, but they had three safeties on the field, and I could see that being something that they would go after this year as well.
Do you feel like K1's going to play less this season then?
No, not really, because I don't see him playing less. Where they used, like if you go back to 2019, where they were using Ward in the slot was that was usually on in early downs, and they would actually, I'm not sure if Tart was coming off the field or actually how they got into it. I'd have to go back and look at like that Rams game and see what the alignments were, but they still had K1 in the game, and he was usually covering the receiver, like in the slot, and then they'd have Ward covering over the tight end. You know what I'm saying? So that and so they were in a nickel coverage, but they were using one of their safeties as a I guess you'd call him a slot corner guy, but over the top of the bigger receiver.